The next topic I wanted to talk about was something that really it kind of pieces a lot of the data points together that we don't portray on our interface, and that's Bob. He lives in your project bottom right hand corner, just floating around. And when you have a very specific question that you might have on your data, or if you need to have a certain analysis run on your data, it's able to parse through everything regarding your project and your project only, and then analyze it and give you some feedback and give you a report. And so we've been making some recent updates to that I think that I'm pretty excited about, and kind of shows like the future of where we're heading with our AI agent and some of its reporting capabilities. Because again, no two projects are the same, right? You have a lot of different reporting requirements, a lot of different reports that different owners and stakeholders might require. So now with these updates, I think we're inching closer to being able to really adapt to any project type, any report type, and put together some really cool insights that you might not have thought of, or it's going to help you make some better decisions. So Jay, you want to talk a little bit about some of the updates we've made to Bob and what's coming up?
Yeah, so when you look at Bob, like for us, Bob used to be a floating icon at the corner of your screen because we were just testing the feature out. We were just seeing the interest of users. If they're finding it anything useful in it, they're using it. So like we have now realized that it's a feature that can be used a lot. You can manipulate your own data, how you want to generate your own reports. Like we tried to create reports for users. Like you just said, John, every project is different. Every project has its own requirements, what kind of report they want, how they want to use the data, and so on. So we thought of creating an AI tool that can help you generate those reports. It doesn't necessarily needs to be like any sort of specific report that we are suggesting you. Like these are just general examples, but you can use Bob to create any kind of report. You can ask for a fatigue report. You can ask for a fatigue report laid over a schedule. You can ask for a productivity report intersecting with a SOS report or a safety report. So you can understand that how was your productivity in terms of worker attendance and onboarding and so on. So it's up to you how you want to overlay those reports, and Bob can help you understand that data. So for example, like right now in Bob, I asked for a workforce productivity report for last 7 days. As soon as I open it in Canvas mode, it will give me an option to view this report. You can download it as a PDF, you can download it as a document, you can also download it as a spreadsheet. I will come to what do I mean by spreadsheet, but like let's say I want to edit some of the sections of the report, like I don't want the section to be there. Only interested in about the key data points, how my workforce is performing, what are the average hours by role type, and so on. And I am interested in about the workforce productivity table, like how many hours each worker has spent on the job site in the last 7 days. How is it divided by location, by job title, and so on. I want to add certain remarks from myself that this report.
Jay, this came up Bob came up with this on its own, right? Like you just said workforce report for the last 7 days.
Yes.
How did it know like what you're looking for? Does it just kind of use its guess based on the data? It just kind of assumes what some good insights are, or like are there presets?
Yeah, so we have defined certain elements to Bob that when someone asks for productivity, they're talking about hours, they're talking about working days, and so on. We haven't given any specific parameters that you have to follow this to create a report when a user asks for productivity report, give them this section, this section, this section. Because like workforce productivity was just an example, like user might ask for a workforce activity report or a daily construction report. So Bob uses its own context, like it's like how a large language model works. It has its own context. It overlays our context of what we have provided, and it uses a RAG-based learning to go through the database, understand what the project parameters are, what they have collected in the data, how is the project performing, and then it also gives you certain key findings and suggestions that like it's seeing a drop in certain companies, average hours varied for each worker around 41%, and which company was performing the less, and so on. So it can give you certain conclusions. It can, like when you're talking about fatigue kind of a report, it will also give you certain action items and so on. So it's analyzing your data and giving you suggestions on the basis of that. So once you do that, you can just simply click on save changes, whatever changes you want to make. Now, this is like let's say you ask for a workforce productivity report for last 7 days. Rather than coming back to the platform every 7 days, you want it to be recurring. You want it to be sent out to your C-suite, you want it to be sent out to your superintendents, and so on. You can simply ask Bob to create a weekly schedule for this, and it will create a weekly schedule. It will show you that, okay, this is a weekly schedule, how you want the report to be delivered in a PDF format, Excel spreadsheet attached to it. So you can select multiple formats, like I want it to be in a PDF. And I also want a spreadsheet so that they can download and look at that data. And you can just simply click on next. You can select what time it needs to be delivered, who it needs to go out to. So like let's say it needs to go out to me, it needs to go out to John and Ganesh and so on. So you can just simply click and update your schedule. Once it's updated the schedule, like right now John isn't part of the project, so it stopped me from adding him. But yeah, once it creates a schedule, you will automatically start receiving a report. A few things that we are adding in over here in the next few months would be a trigger-based report. Right now, this was more of an analysis kind of a report that analyze my data, give me my data back, and so on. What we are planning to add is a trigger-based report where you can go and say that whenever workers in zone A crosses this certain threshold, send me a report. Or whenever my job site worker count crosses 300 workers or 400 workers, send me an alert that these are the companies that have walked in. So you can do trigger-based alerts or reports, whatever you want to call them, on the basis of that. Also, one more thing that we're planning to add over here is a description. The description will contain the detailed context of what is there in the report and how we are making this report for you. So if in future you find some of the sections are not usable for you, you can simply go and remove them.
Yeah, this is great. So every single week, I mean, obviously, it's just going to populate based on the new data that it collects. Will it
Yeah.
run if you could like define sections? Can you define a section to basically just be a section based on most relevant information that might be like a key insight on where workers were, or like the travel time between zone A and zone B, stuff like
Yeah,
that?
you can yeah, like just workforce productivity was just an example. Let's say I have a detailed report that I want. Can you like you can say can you divide the companies under three buckets, and you can define the buckets, bucket A, company A, B, C, and so on. And then you can ask Bob to like only send me data for bucket A when it crosses this threshold. That would be a trigger-based report, but for now you can say send me data for company A defined by these parameters, for company bucket B defined by these parameters, and so on. So you can customize these reports as in how you want to create it, how you want to divide them. Like you want zone time to be included. Like you want, give me a zone time report for company A for every day at around 6 p.m. So you will get a zone time report of how those workers in that specific companies are moving from zone A to zone B to zone C and so on.
I want to get your thoughts on something, and Kay, this is for you as well. I mean, like in construction in general, and we've been in the industry for a while now. I think that we can all agree it's still pretty human centric in terms of the decision making. In terms of like when something needs to happen, it's sparked by a human's decision or humans. You know, they make a phone call, they send an email, but the resources and the tools provided to them to make those decisions are what are being improved pretty drastically right now. I think in today's market, you're seeing a lot more focus on these types of tools to help them make quicker decisions, to help them make better decisions. So something like a triggered alert for the workforce, and the workforce, everyone agrees, is probably the biggest part of every project, right? It's probably the most expensive part. And then also in terms of safety and compliance and productivity, I mean, those types of insights now are going to be delivered straight to you to help you make your decisions on site. What point do you think we'll be able to get, or how close are we now to making like predictive decisions from Bob that are going to be triggered to then, you know, help you basically improve your job site safety, productivity and stuff like that? Like, are we there already, or are we inching closer to that?
I wouldn't say we are technically there already. Like we are getting close. Bob can give you general ideas that if your productivity is going low, that you need to talk to contractor A, contractor B. It's not going to take an action for you right now. Like it's not going to say send a preemptive email to contractor A that your workforce count is reduced and so on. I think we are seeing a major use case in safety side though for these things. Like where Bob can help you analyze that, okay, your workforce is ramping up and you want these parameters to be followed now on the job site, like increase your job hazard assessments that you're collecting, increase the inspections that you're collecting once you cross a certain threshold, and so on. And it can even analyze your schedule. So like if your schedule has certain sort of, like high risk activities happening, it can help you analyze those and it can suggest. That's what we are planning to add in Bob after we are like done with the current phase of work. That's what's on the roadmap.
Well,
Gotcha.
John, it'll always be like a hybrid model, right? And that what I think, so I was reading something very interesting this past weekend, which was, it took us like about 20 years to go through the internet revolution, and it took us like 5 to 10 years to go through like the applications, like, phone revolution, you could call it, the mobile phone revolution. And it seems like AI, it's happening like in 2 years. ChatGPT has already become enterprise level, like crazy. Everybody's using it. So AI revolution might be much faster and it'll happen around us, but in construction, it might happen in a different hybrid kind of way, where like the first line of defense might be like the worker gets a message to correct his actions. So a supervisor's decision making to process and tell the worker to do something might be backed up by an app first flagging to the worker directly within a few seconds that, hey, I flagged you for this, the supervisor knows it, but you could take corrective action already, and I'll inform the supervisor he doesn't need to do anything, you already straightened yourself out. And then the supervisor, if he doesn't get that corrective message within 10 minutes, could get a second message that, hey, this guy's still out of place, go and find him and fix it. So like, in that kind of a hybrid way, where like the first line of defense could be technology, and like the supervisor becomes more of a second backup to that, and then the project manager becomes a third, where like, things can be more efficient, or like marginal changes and improvements start happening. And that, like, it might not seem like a huge revolution or transformation of the process, but it'll definitely make life a lot easier when there's like 500 people on site and you have like, where do I even find this one person and go talk to them at
Yeah.
crunch time.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Like if you think about it, it's a take on human in the loop kind of feedback system that a lot of AI systems follow, but in a different way, where you are creating an alert for the worker, and that worker is now the human in the loop to verify that if it's a correct alert, not a correct alert, and so on.
That
Right.
too, right?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why we're kind of like, we're not fully there yet, because you don't want to be bothering people with alerts left and right. And also, I think in terms of just what the hardware is on site, and how these sites are being designed right now, I think is still very human centric in terms of just like, how things are set up logistically, the hardware that's involved. I think there's a lot more attention being turned towards our type of hardware now, just for just safety reasons alone, just knowing where workers are. I think we had some great feedback from someone that served in the Marine Corps, and they come into construction and they say they couldn't believe that you go to a job site, you don't know where every single worker is. You know where basically like where no one is unless you make a phone call, which was my experience. Working on some high profile projects in the city. You have an incident on site and you have to make corrective action. You have to do something. And you just basically start making a bunch of phone calls. You don't really have the clarity or the transparency. So we're crossing that barrier, I think, now, where you're having that visibility. Kwant gives you the visibility, and now you can start generating insights and generating those triggers that can turn into, what you were saying, Kay, more of a human in the loop type system than having a human trigger and be responsible for everything manually.
Yeah, I think one of the use cases that we also see with that triggered report that I was talking with about Bob was like we used to get these requests like track workers in a high risk area or mark an area restricted, where when a worker enters an area you get an alert and so on. So a lot of this was like we used to cater to some of those user requests. Our idea is that you can now, like in future, you would just like you don't need to use any of those like UI based features. You simply say to Bob that okay, for this area, if anyone other than the job title superintendent enters, I want an alert. So it will help us create like users to also customize their alerts just to get an alert of when they want that feedback to be there rather than every single alert.